because David and I were nattering.
Yeah, we were having a chin wag. Yeah.
Just sort Facebook out. Because David and I were nattering.
Yeah, we were having a chin wag.
Right, that's Facebook sorted out. So just need to let people get aboard now.
Yeah, there's nobody coming aboard yet.
Oh, I've got 2 of 6. And 6 watching.
Oh yeah?
Right.
I'm not up in mine yet.
I get to track the numbers live, but David.
Ah, here we go. Bloody hell. Last Braveheart, Neil Raider 1, Brian Cunningham, Paul McMillan, Alistair Kerr, Eddie Wolfe, Lorraine Hay, Stephen Seven Backyard, Rebecca McDougall, Martin Boyd. Hi guys, how you doing? Nice to see you here. William Leach, hey Stuart. Oh, Tom's on. Hi Davies, hi all Indy supporters. Maeve Brennan, Margaret Mackay, Fiona Allen, Margaret Noakes, Ian Matson, Christine Coyle, James Connolly.
I think anybody coming through on Facebook, yeah, that's unusual.
Yeah. Sorry, all of a sudden you see that it just wouldn't populate, you know. So. Somebody here called Tories don't get tasered. I think that's wonderful.
That's a Facebook folks starting to flow in as well. It's a bit a strange one, the situation with what I can see here, David, because obviously those watching on Facebook are their own community, and those watching on YouTube are their own community, you know, and they're, you know, you don't ever get to see half of what's going on. Hey, who you calling all farts? Who? I'll put my boot up your bahookie. And Christina is thankful that she's got notifications back on Facebook. I forgot to put one out today, but as we know, you get notifications on Facebook. Anyway, numbers are climbing nicely. So you put in a couple of payments to food banks?
Yes, Old Kilpatrick food parcels, and the Southwest Glasgow Food Bank. £200 went to each of those last night. Obviously, you get talking to people, you know, that they're actually running it, and they're ever so thankful. They really are, you know, because what we are doing is we're giving them the ability to go and buy the stuff that they need, rather than relying on somebody filling a bag for them, you know.
What you've got to remember too, David, is a lot of these food banks are having to give you a money as well, so people can go and buy electricity.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So it's important that they've got a stash of cash somewhere where they can help, because there's no point giving somebody food if they don't have any power to cook it.
Right.
You know.
I mean, I assure you, I feel extremely humbled at doing that end of it, that side of what's been set up here, and all I can do is thank the people that have donated, and what we're going to do is keep the thing up as we go on. We'll just choose.
Nothing wrong with YouTube, mate. We've got viewers on YouTube. Indy Scott Bryan, thanks very much. That's very generous of you. As I say, it all helps, and we will reach communities all over Scotland with this.
Yeah.
And it'll help people throughout Scotland, because it's only fair. You guys are plastered all over Scotland and the rest of the world, actually, but we're only dealing in Scotland here.
Yeah.
We really are thankful. The numbers are up over 100 mark, David, so let's get started.
All right.
First one on the book today, it's now become clear that Westminster, Top Civil Servant, at the behest of these fishy banks, is investigating on whether the Scottish Government can pay for a Minister for Independence and put out prospectus like they did today on independence. We'll get to that prospectus later in the show. But it would appear that this hasn't gone away. These people, but the problem is that this question was already answered in 2020.
Yeah.
But because the pandemic came along and bounced it, it went right out of people's minds. So we'll have a wee look for it.
It was answered literally. It was 14 or 16 days before we went into our first lockdown. It was the end of February 2020.
Where is it? Share image. Now what it says is Scottish Government can spend any of its money on independence as per this FOI from 2020. Extract submissions dated 26th of February 2020 to Cabinet Secretary for the Constitution, Europe and External Affairs, Document 4. The law officers, in their opinions of the 6th of December 2019, confirmed ministers can lawfully undertake policy development work, preparing proposals for independence and in calling for the transfer of power to do so. Extracts from the email from Gordon Fisher, Deputy Secretary of Scottish Government Legal Directorate, to the Lord Advocate and Solicitor General on the 28th of February 2020 at 17:21 hours. And CC to Legal Secretariat to the Lord Advocate, Solicitor to the Scottish Government, and a Chief Parliamentary Council. Alright, in particular, we consider, as noted at paragraph 5, that preparation of a bill to be covered by the law officer's opinion of 6th December 2019 confirms ministers can lawfully undertake policy development work, preparing proposals for independence and in calling for a transfer of powers. So it would appear that these people are actually trying to bypass it or trying to bring up or change the way things are done, probably through the back door, in order to stop us talking to ourselves about independence and putting out prospectuses like today's for independence. I mean, if that isn't the oppression.
Yeah, well, it's attempted oppression. Of course it is. What you're trying to do is you're trying to shut the thing down.
Yes.
They're trying to shut the thing down as best they can. You can't stop people talking about independence. You cannot stop. You can't even stop the Tory and Labour politicians in Holyrood discussing to do with independence. How are you going to do that? How are you going to stop that? They mention it more than anybody else. Yeah. So, as far as I'm concerned, just tell them to get stuffed and get on doing what you're doing. Simple as that.
Aye, and of course, another thing that's come up in the Lords, Scottish Government to have less say than Wales and Northern Ireland on environmental laws after amendments to the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. So basically, Scotland to be shut out of anything to do with environmental laws, and any higher standards that we have here will be pulled down. But we knew that the internal market bill was going to do that. Now, as you know, what they're saying is they're giving the ministers the nod to use the Henry VIII powers to veto anything that Scotland's doing. But they already had that, as has been explained before. But of course, these two things are of note and importance. So we've got a wee video here for the national newspaper talking about this. So we'll get a wee run, David.
Yeah, carry on.
So you might not have heard about this. Unfortunately, it hasn't been very well covered in most of Scotland's media, but there are two really big new attacks from the UK government on Scotland this week, and you need to know about them. So the first of these comes from the House of Lords, which is already obviously completely unelected, completely undemocratic. Anyway, the House of Lords is hoping to give Westminster new Henry VIII powers, which means they'll be unable to unilaterally scrap Scottish environmental laws. So this amendment to the UK government's Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill means that ministers in London would have the power to overturn rules made by those in the Scottish Parliament with no scrutiny or accountability. And what's more, they don't want to be able to do that for Wales or for Northern Ireland. It's just Scotland they're hoping to do this to. So now the Scottish government is having urgent talks with the UK government about.
Yeah,
before I play it on, isn't that interesting? They don't intend to put the same rules in place for Wales and Northern Ireland.
David! Whoa, hang on. First off, tell the people who she is.
Oh, she's one of the political reporters at the National. But what's interesting about what she just said about these amendments being put into this bill is it won't apply to Wales and Northern Ireland. It will only apply to Scotland. Basically, vetoing anything that the Scottish Parliament does on environmental issues. And that brings us back to Brexit, because we know they want to drop environmental standards. We have higher standards here in Scotland than the rest of the UK. Yeah. Right, let's play on, find out what, and hear the rest.
Like this, but don't forget, if Westminster wants to push something like this through, they'll just push it through. That's how things work in the Union. The next thing that Westminster is looking to do, and surprise, surprise, it's coming from the Lords again, is there's some discussion about possibly sanctioning the Scottish Government for campaigning on independence. Now, it's certainly an interesting way to look at it. We had an election in 2021 and the majority of seats in Holyrood went to pro-independence MSPs, and so it seems only fair that the Scottish Government would be able to act on those interests. But Westminster is continually trying to make the narrative seem like the Scottish Government is reaching outside of its abilities, talking about independence, and we have to shut it down. I mean, this is pretty serious stuff. We're constantly told that we're better together, we're a union of equals, but now one of the parts of that union is talking about literally sanctioning another one and preventing it from putting through laws that it's voted for. It makes no sense at all. And I don't think this would be particularly appealing to people who are kind of on the fence about independence. It doesn't really look like you get much power through being a Scottish citizen. What do you think? And if you want to read more about these stories, you can head to...
Right. So, yeah, first thing that I've got to make mention of is that the Henry VIII powers follow what is called the statutory instrument, that the government of the day, the UK government of the day, their cabinet members are able to change internally any bill or law that has gone out, right, without having to get a vote within the House of Commons itself. Right. The reason they've done that is because to change one word in a law that's gone out, or a bill they were complaining took days and days and days of work. So they argued that the statutory instrument would be the way of doing that, where they could actually change that word without doing it. Now what's happening is that we've got cabinet members who are misbehaving under this law. It comes from the Henry VIII powers, and it literally allows them to change anything. Do you remember the people that were getting locked up because they were carrying a wee bit of paper that said, "Not my king"? And that was because the Human Rights Act 2000 had a section removed which was on free speech. And therefore, you've got to be careful what we're walking into here. Scotland are walking into a blooming trap as regards all this. So, anyway, David, I'll let you carry on.
See, as we can see, democracy is being denied. It's a form of oppression. The Supreme Court claiming that the Scottish people were no oppressed. This is proof. All this stuff just blows it right out of the water. When you're trying to shut down debate on any subject, that's a form of oppression.
With regard to Lord Fuchs saying that the UK is not a union of equals, we've known that for a long, long time. It should be a union of equals, but it is not. So the fact that I'm saying it really didn't affect me. I don't know about you lot. It definitely didn't affect me because I knew that, right? So. In the fifth law, class action saying Henry V law only applies to England and Wales. No, you're wrong, class action. The statutory instrument is a central government, UK government facility that allows cabinet members to change any law that they want, and it's not just England and Wales. So you're wrong, okay?
Right, anyway, if Scottish law is touched, that's the union over then. No, that's not true. That's not true at all. Let's face it, they struck down the bill to hold a referendum. That was passed here in Scotland legally, and Big Ears refused to sign it.
Yeah.
they took it to court, and the court said, we're no oppressed, and we have political representation in the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers, so we don't qualify for self-determination. We know that's a lot of rubbish, of course, because we definitely do. And Scotland as a nation has been recognised for a very long time. We are a people with our own political system, and we have an affiliation with a geographical area of land, basically our country called Scotland.
Well, you cannot have a treaty that is signed by both sides, and it was signed by both sides, where one side can refuse the other side from leaving. Or tearing up the treaty. That's just impossible.
The only barrier we have is democracy.
Yeah.
Because there has to be a vote of some sort to say that that's the clear will of the people.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of flaws in the Supreme Court ruling, and I thought it should have been tackled. But at the same time, as we've already spoken about, the Supreme Court doesn't have the qualifications to deal with an international treaty.
Yeah.
That would need to be an international court.
Yeah.
But anyway,
you would have thought the Good Law project would have been such a big item. You thought the Good Law project would have taken that up and actually taken the Supreme Court to court over the finding.
Well, the Scottish Government should have done something about it.
Yes, I agree.
Let's move on to item 3. For today, the UK have highest debt interest of any Western developed nation. Now, inflation, interest rates all have a bearing on debt interest payments. As interest rate goes up, the UK debt interest is going up as well. It's not just your mortgage. You know, interest rate and debt's going up right across the bloody board. And that applies to the UK government's debt as well.
2 weeks ago, the UK passed a line. We passed 100% of GDP to debt ratio, right? That means that we couldn't take on any more debt because the UK cannot service that debt without creating money through quantitative easing. Yeah?
That's the next subject we're going to get to, actually.
Yeah. So really, it's now the situation where...
Well, debt to GDP in the latest figures is 100.02% of GDP. So it went above 100% of GDP. So that's taking negative equity to a new height.
Well, you know? In a situation like that, if you take that as being like a normal individual, right? You bring in £1,000 a month, for example, right, as your way. That's what you're left with after your tax and all the rest of it, right? Okay. And you've got a credit card, and you've spent on that credit card to where the credit card, just in interest payments, not in the service and the actual reducing the debt. We're talking like in interest payments. It's charging you £1,000 a month. You're bankrupt.
Let's say, folks, if you're on YouTube, smash the like button, will you? It helps with the algorithm. Wait a minute. No, we'll cover that in a minute. It was Tom's statement. What did they make of Salvo on Saturday, guys? Sadly, I missed it. It was at the Battle of Falkirk commemorations. Tom, to be honest, we was just a watch and wait.
Yeah,
nothing new as far as we can tell.
Can I tell you what we said about it on Monday? It was very, very simple. We said, good luck to anybody that's involved with that, right? Wonderful, marvellous, keep on going. However, as there was no new information being given out, David and I will both wait until either A, we hear of a court proceedings taking place, or B, we have a date for the group heading across to New York to talk to the United Nations. Until that happens, really there's nothing to report, Tom. Okay. So.
And back to the subject about the UK having the highest debt interest payments. Apparently, we're paying about 110 billion quid a year in debt interest payments.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely mental when you look at the 2.8 trillion we are in debt now. Apparently, that's 48,000 for every man, woman, and child in the UK, and 77,000 for every taxpayer. It's huge amounts, really. Which brings us on to the UK. You have to UK faces 150 billion from Bank of England, a bill from Bank of England over losses in bond yields, and it must be paid by April 2023. So basically, what's happened is, as interest rates went up, yields for bonds went down. So there is now a deficit in the money that's been lent out of 150 billion. So that's another 150 billion sticking top of that 1.8 trillion. So we're getting very near the 3 trillion mark here.
Yeah, but also just in amongst that, right, you've got to understand that because the Bank of England have asked the UK government to repay this amount of money, there is no way that the UK government can provide that money. Normally what happens is the UK government say, oh, can you produce us 500 million or 500 billion or 50 billion, right? And what happens is they press the button on the computer and boom, it goes out there to wherever it's supposed to go, right? In this situation, because it's going back the way, the only way that the UK government can manage to push money back into the Bank of England to deal with this and actually wash its nose is through taxation. So there you go, guys. All right.
Didn't know about the UK government giving Turkey 380 million. And Peter, you're right. That's what Salva's good for. Educating people about Scottish sovereignty. Nobody's saying what they're doing isn't interesting. What value it has going forward. Well, we're quite happy to watch. It's a watching brief. We'll see what value it has going forward.
Yeah.
But as I say, UK is facing 150 billion. A bill to the Bank of England for losses made during quantitative easing. Well, if they buy up bonds and the values of these bonds have fallen.
Yeah. We saw on the Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, who was the Chancellor at the time, that the gilts and bonds market went like that, and it affected pensions and hedge funds, all the rest of it, right? The typical buyers of these things, the 10-year bonds, whatever,
The Bank of England did prop up our pensions to the tune of 40 billion because of that idiot.
That's right.
Yeah. So really, the people doing that road couldn't run a Menage, could they?
It seems they've got themselves into a bit of a mess, and yet again, I look at it and I go, why are we still involved with this? Why are we part of the union? Why hasn't this been forced through? Like some kind of an election, right? Fine. If we've got to wait until the election in 2024, which we reckon is coming, fine. But we're going to have to plan for it.
Right. We'll get to Nigel Farage later on, Alistair. It's quite interesting. Yep, the taxpayer did take a hit to the tune of 350 million when NatWest shares fell. But we'll speak about that later in the programme, okay? So, a bit of good news maybe for people with lower incomes. There's a new energy supplier coming into the market. Will it survive an onslaught by the big six? Not quite sure. But what we can tell you is that they plan to sell at 5% below the price cap.
Right, so what happens when Ofgem force them to go to the wall and then force the people that have gone with them back to a British Gas or Centrica or whoever, right? One of the big six. This to me is pretty empty and pretty weak. Yeah? Don't you agree? we had, the Tories talk about, the free market economy, right? And then it was Ofgem that's been controlled by the Tories that are in power. And effectively, the Ofgem, my goodness me, they've got questions to answer in terms of they got rid of practically every bit of competition out of the energy marketplace. And they did it over just a few weeks. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Right, opinion of the Sterling event, something of a damp squib. Nevertheless, remaining very hopeful situation will drive forward towards independence.
Helen, we've got nothing further to tell you on that. We're waiting on the people that are involved. I mean, we had Sarah Sawyers on here. Lovely lass, really enjoyed having her on. But, and she talked really interesting things. But it's a case of waiting to see what is actually going to happen. It's all very well announcing what the status quo is now, but we need now a court date, a meeting at the UN, like we had with the Scottish UN delegation that forced the Council of Europe to force the British government to form devolved governments in Scotland and in Wales. So it's that kind of situation. It's not going to resolve quickly, and it's still going to require a vote by the people of Scotland after it's all shaken loose. Yeah.
Right, you ready to get your wee violin out and your purple piss pumper? Shell's profits dropped 50% on same period for last year. Oh,
the band played Believe It.
Hold on. Alexis is no feeling great. She says she feels frustrated and depressed. What can you do? It's not one of my areas of expertise, but thanks very much, Alexis, for the donation. If you're feeling really down and you don't have anybody you can really talk to, I suggest a visit to the GP.
Yes.
Right. So Shell's profits down 50% on this time last year. They're saying it's because of falling energy costs.
We've David and I, before we came on here, we had a look at what the big energy companies like Shell are doing across the world. They're using influencers. If any of you have heard of influencers before, my own stepson is an influencer. What happens is he's a really good looking guy, and he gets like jackets and things like that sent to him by manufacturers, and what he does, he goes online wearing them and he talks about them, and that's an influencer. Well, the oil companies are using influencers to tell people the good news about what Shell are doing and all the rest of it, right? The fact that Shell are now blooming saying they've lost half their profits since last year, boo-hoo-hoo, I don't believe you.
The profits are still really big.
Yeah,
I don't believe 3.2 billion quid.
But nothing's changed. Nothing has physically changed. They're still pumping the same amount of money out of the seabed, right? So no one call it oil or gas. It's money, right? Okay. So, and they're still paying their shareholders the same amount of money. So what's happened? You cannot just lose 5 billion on nothing. There's got to be something to spend it on. It's like me winning the lottery and saying, David, I'm buying a house, and you saying, yeah, big guy, you're not spending it, David. That's an asset, right? So it's the same with Shell. If they have lost 5 billion from their profits over the course of a year, I have to say,
no, this is just a quarter, David.
It's a quarter.
Just the second quarter. This time last year, in the second quarter, they made $11.9 billion.
Yeah.
Right, which came to about 9 billion quid.
Okay, and this year,
This quarter, they made £3.2 billion.
Go on then.
$5 billion.
Tell me where they've lost it.
I have no idea.
Exactly. And in actual fact, do you know something? Any company can move profits about, right? And I'll tell you what, if I could do it, they can definitely do it.
Fair dues. So we really don't give a damn that they've not made as much money as they did in the second quarter of last year.
Yeah, they're just not showing it. That's all it is.
Aye, probably.
I think we're all bored fucking yesterday. So anyway, the story about the new energy provider.
Very generous of you. Thank you very much, Alistair.
The new energy provider Hughes providing 5% cheaper than the price cap.
And £33 a year lower in standard charges.
Yeah. It's all good news. But if Ofgem decide to do a dirty on them like they did with lots of other companies, as far as I'm concerned,
for people who are on lower incomes, then it might be worth looking at Hughes Energy and seeing if it's worthwhile transferring.
But then what happens is, all the people that go on to Hughes, they could end up whereby that goes pop, and the Ofgem move you on to British Gas or whoever they fancy. Yeah, something like that.
The British Gas profits went up by 969 million. Aye. Wonderful.
Hey, no, Shell gave them a wee tap. That's what it was.
That's it. Right, let's move on. Fergus, you keep SNP. What are you surprised by this?
To be honest with you, we discussed this again, and you brought something to the table which I wasn't aware of, that Fergus wasn't happy with the tie-up with the Greens.
Thank you, Lorraine. Very, very generous. No, he wasn't. He's never been happy with the tie-up with the Greens, and he's of the opinion that the Scottish Government would lose an independence vote based on their Green policies.
Yeah.
I find that hard to believe, but that's Fergus's belief. But I didn't see them suspending him anyway. No way his mother recently passing away.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, over the next few years, there are going to have to be some really, really hard decisions made by the Scottish Government, and there'll be decisions that we as citizens, even if we're independent, might not like, and it might be to do with how we are dealing with climate change and all the rest of it, right? And still in all, we've got people in this country, in Scotland, that don't believe that climate change has anything to do with the activities of man. And besides, even if it was through the activities of man, they argue that, well, like Tony Blair, he says, we could literally switch off every power station in the UK, and China would make that up in a week.
Paul, I don't know what the Scottish Government position is in deep sea mining, but I'll look into it.
Yeah.
And apparently it's not a Scottish Government we've got, it's a British Council office. Fair enough, Billy.
Yeah, all right, okay.
Right, next one. Labour hemorrhaged 10,000 members in 2 months.
It's a number that's been, I think, because of the truth, it's been massaged a little bit, isn't it?
Actually, it's just starting to tear out. They've actually hemorrhaged 360,000 members. Jeremy Corbyn had the Labour Party up at 500,000 members, the biggest political party in Europe.
Yeah.
Labour membership's down to 138,000.
Yeah.
So Labour have got a big problem at the moment.
Yeah.
Because people in England are looking at Labour and going, what's the point?
Yeah.
And of course, Scottish Labour and the London and Welsh Labour in London and London HQ are not getting on very well at the moment. Seem to be told, sit down, shut up, get back in your box job and tough. You'll do what the central office tells you. And there's a stushy going on between Scottish Labour at the moment with the London office of trans rights. Whereas they're stuck doing the gender bill here in Scotland with a Section 35 order, and Labour proposes something very similar. And as we know, the Tories have proposed something similar and all.
And yet Jackie Baillie says, we're like that. Scottish Labour in London, just like that. Or is it like that? I don't know. Might be like that. But there you go. I don't think that Sarwar has got a leg to stand on. He could say what he likes today, and tomorrow Starmer could literally just blow it all away. That's what the Labour situation is at the moment.
That feeling that you got of feeling powerless and towards Scottish independence and influencing people. Alexa, there's a lot of people feeling like that, but that feeling is going to grow into independence, because when you feel powerless, that's when you realise you've got to take power back. What we've seen is systematic attacks and devolution since the Brexit referendum. And people are starting to feel more and more disenfranchised, and that's going to make them angry. It's going to make them angry. And that forces politicians to move when people get angry. So we understand your frustration, Alexis.
The difficulty we've got, if you imagine, if you like, people like me are looking to SNP and the hierarchy of the SNP, and looking at what they are going to have to do over the next while. They're going to have to be quite disobedient little politicians. And if you look at what happened to the politicians involved in Spain, Catalonia, right, where they ended up having to run away because they were getting locked up. I bet you the SNP politicians, such as Humza Yousaf and all the rest of it, are looking at it and going, is there a possibility that can happen to us? And we, as the people that are behind them, we have to support them to the hilt, really.
Well, as we know, I mean, Humza's taking the fight to him when it comes to what he said is his preferred route to independence.
Yeah.
That's basically telling you, by the way, once we win this share of the vote, we get the percentage, the majority of Scottish MPs, we're calling this.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yep. So you're right, class action, the next general election should be very interesting.
Yeah.
It should be. I mean, Labour are a mess right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
as
you know, people are, I mean, the reasons people are leaving the party, such as a local constituency, preferred candidates are being replaced by Starmer stooges and things like that. So it's all non-democratic, they're saying, and they're walking away to the Labour Party. And you can't blame them. But the question is, where are they going to put their vote? Or are they just not going to vote?
Yeah, there's a huge stooshy going on at the moment where the guy that was the mayor up in
he's going as an independent.
He's been deselected. And he's the most popular guy they've got out there for anything.
I mean, he's done well in the bloody job. He's created jobs. He's cleaned up his area. Yeah. He's fed hungry children. He's done amazing things.
I'd be happy to have him as an SNP politician.
Well, anyway, he's going to run as an independent.
Yeah.
For the mayor.
Yeah.
And it looks like he's going to win it.
Yeah.
Looks like he's going to win it.
And what's that Sandra saying? Racist Paisley is back. You're talking about Ian Paisley, Jr.
Right, Jr.
Right, okay.
Okay, so the immigration white paper released today on how Scotland will deal with immigration and citizenship and, of course, passports. Right.
This is something that we should be talking about openly between ourselves, right? This speaks of us becoming an independent country and inviting EU citizens to become Scottish citizens, and people where they maybe have a grandparent that is Scottish being automatically entitled to become a Scottish citizen. And I think this is a lovely white paper that's gone out today. And I hope that we all get behind it. The thing that I would really like to see, and I think would actually drive lots of people have been talking about, is let's just add an extra few thousand onto the Scottish pension, state pension, and that in itself would have lots of older people like me quite happy to vote for Scottish independence. There you go.
Well, they have said they will bring it up to the European average.
Yep.
Right, after independence. They're not going to wait.
Yep.
We might have to borrow to do it, but we've got lots of assets to borrow against.
Yep.
And as we know, Standard and Poor and the other Fitch and the other credit rating agencies says that Scotland will start off with AAA plus credit rating.
Yep.
And they also say that it's basically a carbon copy of the Southern Irish immigration system. And the other thing is passports. The passport will be burgundy and it will meet EU standards.
If you have, I'm going to tell you this because I've just done the calculation of my own, right? If you have a standard state pension in Scotland now, that gives you £10,595 per year. Okay? That's £815 every 4 weeks. Just divide it by 4, times it by 52, that gives you the figure. All right? That is a ridiculous pension. And the average pension in the EU
25 grand.
No, that's not the average, David. That's a higher 15 grand is where it sits at, right? So if Scotland was to come up to 15 grand, we're talking like another 4,500 sat on top of that. That would put a lot of smiles on a lot of faces if that were to happen.
Well, as I say, this white paper's went out today, and it tells the Scottish public how we would deal with immigration, how we would deal with our borders.
Yep.
It talks about the common travel area, which,
Yep.
of course, was quietly quashed at the last referendum, so people didn't know, so they could claim passports at the English border, even though we're in a common travel area with England, Wales, and North and Southern Ireland. Well, mental.
Sorry, guys, my way of thinking on this with regards to a border between Scotland and England, if we become independent, a wee word to the wise, we need to have a border wall or a fence between Scotland and England. And there are 26 individual routes between Scotland and England by road, and each of them needs covered, or they need blocking off, and therefore the other one's covered. Thank you, Alexis.
I'm trying to call which one.
But I'll be very, very happy if we have
right, hold on to read it, Alexis.
Border fence between Scotland and England after we go.
David, when we get a super chat, it's courtesy to read it out, right?
Yeah. Fine.
I meant that I feel powerless and helpless to affect change regarding Scottish. I get that new, Alexis. I didn't get it the first time, right. You know. And making the world a better place. Sorry, didn't they think you were suicidal, right enough? You know, but never know when you're just reading a comment, Alexis. You know, and I'm very glad to hear you don't want to hurt yourself. No, you didn't scare us. We were just concerned, of course, because that's what happens when you build a community like we have over the years with the Indie Truck Davy thing and do with this. It's a community. We worry about each other. But thanks very much for the generous donation and clarifying that for us, Alexis. Thank you. And listen, we all feel that frustration, but as I say, that's a powerful emotion, and that's something to use to drive yourself forward. The fact that people feel powerless generally affects change. It does. It generally does affect change. Right. So that's that covers passports. And of course, they're saying that the passport will be burgundy.
David, we're being asked by Stephen Bankier to take Paul Paisley off the chat. He's just been negative and inept. That's one of our viewers that is talking at that, right? I think looking at some of the comments that's going up, I think it's wise just if we can quieten Paul Paisley down, please. Yeah.
Okay, time out.
It's just inappropriate, you know. So.
I don't really know. I'm not really paying much attention.
Yeah, better than me, a guy that thinks he's a woman. You know, come on, we're better than that. We don't need to have comments like that put up. Right.
That's because of the stushy between the Labour Party in Scotland and the Labour Party down south there. We're trans rights. But I'll pat him on a time out and out, and if he's come, if it's disruptive, then he'll not be on a time. He's only on a time out for a short period of time. Maybe the rest of the show.
Yeah, Paul, take this as we're dragging you back by your reins. Just think about what you're saying. It's not very appropriate.
It's just 10 minutes in the naughty step, all right? I need an admin to run the chat. Probably. Maybe it would be a good idea to look into recruiting moderators.
Aye, yeah. It's something we will look at. Don't worry about it. But anyway, David and I are simply doing our awfully best, which is terribly hard at times.
Chatty Rat makes a very interesting point as well. It would be in the interest of the Scots, English, Welsh, Manx, Channel Islanders and Irish to retain the common travel area when Scotland becomes independent. Well, there's a will. There will, however, have to be customs and Scottish Border Service. You're absolutely correct, because goods will need to be checked.
Yeah, can I give you a very simple potted example? I went to Vancouver to see my family, and my family, section of my family, have got like a caravan in the woods in Washington State, which is in America, right? So, and the border to America to go down to Seattle is literally, you come out of Vancouver, drive a bit, and then you come to the border, right? And I watched people in cars and all the rest of it just flying through, and I said, well, I asked the question after, how they doing that? Well, they've got a wee thing on their number plate that identifies them, and they get flagged straight through. Every 12th or 15th journey they take, they get pulled over for a quick check. Can I just see in your book? That sort of thing, right? The trucks, yet again, there's knowns and there's unknowns. If they're knowns, they generally go straight through, right? People taking their wains to school that might be in the Washington State somewhere. I mean, they bother. So it works. That works really, really well, and it's really fast. And they were processing thousands of people every hour. You know, and it was just a case of the borders went through. The only people that were pulled aside were people like me, who were in a hire vehicle, and I was heading for Washington State, and I had a piece of a document with me that they had to check. All right.
Somebody's asked if I'm going to start my morning shows again. I'm thinking about doing a newspaper review show. I've been looking at it for a while, and just try to work out how to write it in a couple of hours. I don't want to spend 8 hours a day studying the news again, because you've got to leave yourself some time, you know. Right, now, our final subject for the day has come up in the comments already, and it has to do with GB news owners made money shorting on NatWest shares throughout the feud that Nigel Farage had with NatWest. So, obviously, when NatWest, Dame whatever her bloody face is, Dame Rosa, whatever her name is, had to resign, well, the Nigel Farage carry on. It turns out that one of the backers of GB News, a hedge fund, Marshall Wace Fund, who'd bought the GB News shares for the Disney Channel and things like that, a couple other places. Anyway, they've been building shop on they've been betting on NatWest's share prices bombing, or the Nigel Farage thing, and the chief executive being forced to resign.
Well, you can imagine, David, that person will have been talking to Nigel Farage, and Nigel Farage has maybe been saying, I'm going to go after Coutts and therefore the NatWest banking group, right? And that guy's been thinking, well, he's got a TV channel, right? And he's whipped people up in the past, right? So therefore, there's a good chance that NatWest Banking Group will fare badly over this. And the other thing, which is the lady that ran Coutts as the CEO, she was sat beside somebody and she mentioned Nigel Farage, and that person reported it. And obviously, we have laws nowadays that cover personal details.
Confidentiality laws, of course.
Yeah, that's right. So therefore, she's had to resign over it. It's silly bism, right?
It's not quite insider trading, but it doesn't have to make you worry, wonder, does it? Yeah.
But to my way of thinking, I saw her talking on the news, and she seemed to me like an older Houri Henrietta that I identified in London, right? They are people that think they have every right to be in charge of the rest of us, right? And I think she thought she was above anything like that happening to her.
Hold on, Billy's comment. GB News was set up with as little as 200 grand, yet Scotland still can't get their own channel. What did the SNP do with that? The 600,000, it shows in the accounts, mate. We're not going into that again. Now, why can't the Scottish Government set up a Scottish broadcaster? Because licensing the airwaves is reserved.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I mean, there's a good few who's tried to set up an independent radio station. We don't have any of them anymore. They're all owned outside Scotland.
Yeah.
And that includes Clyde.
Yeah.
So, and there's been a few of us tried to get licensing for radio and television stations. They just wouldn't play.
Yeah.
They just wouldn't play. But I just thought it was quite a funny story that one of the owners of GB News had been hedging against a drop in NatWest shares. You know. So they've been shorting on the bank shares. There's no law against it.
Derek Gallagher makes the point that regarding your news review, a once a week news review, David, would suffice. What you did before was excruciatingly debilitating, far too stressful. But you and Davies' contributions are valued. Thank you, Derek. Yeah.
Oh, that reminds us, we're next Wednesday we're going on the John Drummond show, aren't we?
That's right. Yeah. What we discussing? Anything that we, I mean, today I had to say that David and I were having a laugh at this before we came online, and it was the fact that Sky News had put up a news regarding the UFOs in America, where they were being discussed in the Senate, right? There's a guy in front of the microphone in the Senate, and he was saying, well, we've got UFOs that come from 80,000, drop down to 20,000 within a second, and then they do the opposite. They go from 20,000 up to 80,000, and we can't keep up with that, And you've got things like the Pentagon have refused to admit that they've been covering anything up. That's the funniest thing of all.
That's the bloody silly season, David. I mean, you do have to look to find the news. You really do. Yeah. I mean, the stories we brought you today, folks, was the best of the crap that was out there. Yeah. I mean, we could have, as I said last week, we talked about seagulls nicking crisps in Aberdeen. Absolutely.
And I saw a squirrel just outside my window there before we came on.
Right, there's an all under one banner march in Ayr this Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I will be going along to the Indie 2 Cafe, where Sarah and I will help them raise money for charity. Well, Sarah will help them raise money for charity and food banks. That's another one of the outlets.
Yeah. Indie 2 Cafe do a fantastic job, right? For goodness sake, guys, see if you go along to these marches, make a beeline to the Indie 2 Cafe, get
a cup of coffee, get a cake, get a roll.
And the people that run it are the nicest people in the world, they really are, right? So you'll
get to meet me.
Oh, I don't know about
that. And you'll get to meet me. I'll be there in the march. We can up and down the march. And then we get to the other end, I'll be going to the MD2 Cafe where Sarah and I, as I say, well, Sarah will help. I'll watch while I drink all the coffee.
It's a hard job, but somebody's got to do it, yes.
Yes, it is a hard job. So, rolls and sausages, no, they don't do that sort of thing. It's gammon, cheese, the usual stuff.
The thing sandwiches they've made up, Millie, and nice cakes and things like that. And you'll get a nice cup of coffee off them or whatever, you know.
Aye, I really love with people, and the money all goes to food banks.
Yeah.
Again, you know.
So you saw, I don't know if any of you saw the post I put up yesterday about the food banks that we run, that they also do a similar thing.
Class action there, none of this superstar nonsense, Davies. No, there's none of that, but I will be there because Sarah will be working there, and I'll be on the march. I'll probably broadcast for the march. They say I'm just letting you know if you're nothing fixed for Saturday and you want to go for a wee day out in air and join the All Under One Banner March, then please come along. And say when you get to the end of the march, look for the MD2 Cafe stall, because when you go along there, you make a donation, you get your cup of coffee, your roll, a nice chat with the people who run the stall, nice chat with the people running about. There's normally a good few people hanging about. They're saying, and I'll be there. So if you're there, come up and say hello. All right.
Right. So that brings us to the end of the broadcast, Davey.
It does.
There's one thing we'll maybe finish off with, which we did mention that we'd put in at the end. I think it's quite important, is the IPCC's action.
Oh, the Scottish professor.
Yeah.
To the IPCC, to chair the IPCC.
Yeah, a chap called Jim Skeer. S-K-E-A.
Aye. So congratulations to him. He's now been appointed the head poncho at the UN when it comes to climate crisis.
Yeah.
So well done to him.
I think this is wonderful when someone's appointed by the UN to actually take such a senior position on such a senior issue in the world. You know, there can't be, there really, apart from wars, there can't be anything more important than the climate crisis.
Aye.
Because the climate crisis has got the ability to kill us all eventually.
So, remember, folks, if you're on Facebook, it's public, share, hit the like button, comment away. I'll see the comments on Facebook later. If you're on YouTube, do us a favour, hit the like button.
Yes.
Right, and if you haven't subscribed, because last time I looked, we need one more subscriber to get 1,500. You know, so do us a favour, if you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button and get us other 1,500.
Yeah, you just ask the wife or the girlfriend or the husband or the boyfriend or whatever, just, will you subscribe to this?
The more likes we get, it moves us up the algorithm, basically. The more views we'll get, and the more subscribers we get, that helps with advertising revenues, and that's all going to food banks, folks.
If you imagine the advertising revenues we get, because I swear, it's my fault, right? Because I swear, it's like we get like 12 pence a show.
We don't get better than that, David. I think we get 140, 150 a month. So, we want to thank everybody for the support today, especially those who bought super stickers and super chats, and thank everybody who's made donations direct to the bank account, details of which are available on the YouTube site and on the Facebook stream.
Also, if you need the bank account, sort code and account number.
Oh, finally we've got there. We're already the other 1,500 mark. You fanfare.
These are glad. There we are. With the account number and the sort code are on that post that I put up yesterday. The donations. So if you want to find that, you can find it either on the Two Davies group, or you can find it on my own timeline. All right, and David's timeline as well. But you need, because of the way his works, you need to look well down. With mine, you'll get it near the top. All right. So there you go, guys. It's a better way of donating, because at the end of the day, Google can be a wee bit expensive. Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, I've got a wee bit of work to do tonight. It's going to take me all of half an hour. So I want to get my tail out the door and get back by 6 o'clock, and that'll be my working day over.
Well, what can I say? I'm a pensioner. I've got no work to do.
You're a bloody liar. You have to do a survey on Friday.
No.
It's a
week on Friday. I'm a pensioner this week.
If it's a week on Friday, David, are you coming back up the same day?
Yes.
I'll see if I can book next Friday off. I'll go with you.
Oh, now that's a great idea. We could actually do a show on the road.
Aye. We can go live on YouTube, and I'll go live on Facebook and my phone. Madam Director's just intervened and said you haven't checked with me if you can do such a thing, dear boy. See who must be a babe. Has intervened there, Davy boy.
Yeah. I can't go out. My wife says so. There you are. Right.
Sorry, I hadn't checked whether I could ask my boss for a day off to go with you, Davy.
Oh dear. Right. Okay.
The joys of being married. Hey, the one thing I've learnt in marriage is that I don't know a single fellow on the planet who woke up one day and thought it's a good idea to give up making his own decisions. Exactly. But we all get married and that's what happened.
Do you know, I got stopped by a policeman the other day there. And he said to me, no, look, Mr. Milligan, we've talked to you about this before, about driving in your car without your wife to direct you. When you're driving back home, right, she'll go, right, turn left here. And that, it's only like 120,000 times we've done that trip back to the house, but she still needs to say, oh, turn left here,
I've only lived in this house for 17 years, but she's still going to tell me how to get there. I mean, same at home when you go to the supermarket, the first question is, why did you park here? Exactly. I've been parking successfully at supermarkets all my fucking life. Exactly. It's only when she's in the motor I'm not parking it right.
Yep. And come on, admit it. You go where she tells you.
Of course.
You have to go.
Tell me I'm working with you next Friday.
Right. Okay. Bye, guys. Bye, Davey.
Bye, Davey.